Hey, Stacey David here, and this is the Tales of a Gearhead podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals since 1919. That's right, over 100 years building tools and still going strong. If you need tools, check them out. You won't be disappointed. All right, let's get rolling. I love this next question. This comes from a guy named Curtis. And Curtis, man, he's hitting it right on the head. He goes, I've got a project here. He said, but man, it takes me so long. He says, why is it taking me so long? He goes on to say, why do these projects take so long? You make it look so easy on TV. You've seen my projects. I'm just like you, man. It takes time to do these things. That's probably the biggest mistake, other than cost, that people make on a project is they do not factor in the proper time. This is a really good question. So I'm going to walk you through some stuff. You guys are going to enjoy this one because this is something that nobody addresses. And they really need to, because time is of the essence, as they say, especially when it comes to a project. First thing, Curtis, is don't put pressure on yourself. I don't care what you've seen on the TV shows about building a car in a week and all that other kind of stuff. Forget that. Don't put pressure on yourself. Don't let your wife or your dad or your mom or somebody put pressure on you either. It is your project. It is something that you have picked up because you enjoy working on. Well, don't let anybody take that away from you. That being said, you do need to be realistic about it too. One of the things that has happened with the outset of a lot of the automotive shows is that people have sat there and watched it and thought, that's really cool. I can do that. And that is the goal of the gear show. But the goal is to prep you properly to get into the proper project. That's why we came up with the whole 5 levels of restoration series, all of that stuff. And if you're not familiar with that, I'm going to run through it real quick. A level 1 is get it running and driving. A level 2 is a cosmetic restoration. A level 3 is a resto mod. A level 4 is a frame off, resto mod or whatever, just a frame off. And then a level 5 is a full custom deal. And each one of those builds off of the other. Every project you can possibly think of will fall into one of those 5 categories. So with that in mind, let me just go into the time on this because, like I said, I think this is one of the most important things because time is one of those things that we all have a limited amount of. And when it's gone, it's gone. So it's important that you spend it properly on your project, in your life, all of that stuff. So as far as a project, most projects other than a level 1, now keep in mind a level 1 is get it running and driving. So this is something that you pulled out of a barn or something. You just want to get it running and driving. And so it's basically mechanical stuff. You can nail that pretty quickly. Where people run into trouble is when they get into a partial restoration or a full build or a frame off or a ground up or any of those things. Like I said, your level 2 is your cosmetic or mechanical restoration. This is basically keeping something fairly original, but modifying it some, with maybe a new motor or something like that. That also includes your newer vehicles that are what I call bolt-on projects. So if you buy a newer truck and you put a lift kit on it and wheels and tires and some cat skin interior and that kind of stuff, that's a level 2. And that's stuff that you can usually knock out pretty quickly. The problem is that when people go deeper than that and they've never been there before, and they start going, I want to totally restore a vehicle from the ground up. And you don't just jump into that. You need to work up to that level because there's room that is needed, there's skills that are needed, there's tools that are needed before you attempt something like that. If you don't have all that, then you're going to get into a situation and it's just going to drive you crazy. And now let me give you a breakdown in time. And I think this is going to surprise some of you guys. Most projects above a level 1 take about 300 hours or more. That's just a starting point. Now, 300 hours, that might sound like a lot, but that's not too much. If you take your car or truck to a local shop and they work on it 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, that's 2.5 weeks. They've chewed up 100 hours. So those of you that are sitting out there and you've had your vehicles at shops for 6 months or a year, I'll let you do the math on that. That's not pleasant math work there, though. So the stuff is either sitting there or they're not working on it or whatever. These projects, especially as you start getting up into the level 3 resto mod and on up into the frame offs, these can get a tremendous amount of hours. If you're looking at a frame off style build or a paint job, interior, that kind of thing, you're easily looking 800 to 1,000 hours. Easy. And probably more, depending on how bad, the body is, what kind of rust replacement. I've got thousands of hours in Sergeant Rock and some of these other projects. So that adds up really quick. So let me just break this down. The average person hopefully has a job. And let's say you just work from 9 to 5. So you get home at 6 o'clock after you get through traffic and all that stuff. So from 6 to 7, you have dinner. I'm just trying to get some numbers here. So from 7 to 8, you relax. You have about an hour after dinner where you talk or you relax or do that kind of thing. So you have from 8 to 10, 2 hours, you have that open to work on your car. So let's say you do that. Let's say you do that every day. That quickly adds up. I'm writing it down here. You have 10 hours a week on the weekdays that you're putting on your project. Let's say you work all day Saturday on your car, 8 hours. All right? And then let's say Sunday morning you get up, go to church, you go out to dinner. So let's say you put 4 hours down on Sunday, a half day. So that's 12 hours total for the weekend. And then when you add that for the week, the other 10, you got 22 hours. All right? I'm doing my math work here. So that adds up to, if you do that 52 weeks out of the year, that adds up to 1,144 hours a year. Okay, so that's how many hours you have available if you work on your car all the time. Now, that sounds like a lot of hours. You're feeling pretty good about that, aren't you? Mm-hmm. Now, let us explain the problem here. Are you really going to work on your car every night? Are you really not going to sit and watch a movie and go out somewhere, maybe go to dinner somewhere and have some fun with the kids and do something, go to a football game? Sure you are. Are you really not going to go somewhere on a weekend? You're going to work on that car every Saturday? No, you're not going to do that. You're going to take vacations. You're going to go out and do stuff. There's holidays in there. There's all kinds of things. So how about we just cut that down that you just spend 10 hours a week on your project? Multiply that by 52 weeks a year. That's 520 hours a year. Okay, that sounds pretty good. But are you really going to do that? I have found realistically, people don't even do that. You just don't have that much extra time. So realistically, most people will spend about 5 hours a week on their project. And that is weekends, that kind of thing, because you'll be in and out. You'll be waiting for products. You'll be waiting for parts. Something will come up. The dog will get loose. You'll have to, build a fence, do something. So that adds up to about 260 hours a year, which if you have a 400-hour project, you're talking 2 years. You see how that adds up? So the average project for a guy, that wants to do just some sort of mild restoration, maybe an interior paint job, motor swap kind of thing, this can easily turn into a 2-year thing, just because life happens. And that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. I'm just trying to give you some realistic numbers before you jump into a project. So if you're looking at that going, oh my gosh, I don't want to spend 2 years on a project. Well, what that means is that you don't jump into one of these frame offs or a big heavy resto mod deal or a cosmetic or original style restoration. You stick a little simpler into a get it running and driving thing, or a simple level 2. Something that you don't have to do a paint job, something you don't have to do a new convertible top, something you don't have to, take it to a shop and have them do an interior. That's the kind of thing that you need to, that takes you back to choosing the right project from the start. Now, let's say that you just want to take it to a shop. Let's just say, you have the money and you're like, I don't want to do this myself. I'll just take it to a shop and I'll pay them and I'll tell them to get on it and finish it quick so I can get out and enjoy it. Well, let's look at some numbers on that. Let's say you got a project that's going to take 1,000 hours. All right? And you take it to a shop, they work on it 8 hours a day. Let's be generous. Let's say they do that 3 days a week, because they're not going to work on it 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, unless you're paying up front a lot, because that would mean that they're putting a lot of other projects on hold, and most shops will not do that. So you have to understand that they're taking other jobs while they're working on yours. And that's just the nature of that. So let's just be generous and say they're doing, 3 hours or 8 hours a day for 3 days a week. That's 24 hours a week. Then if you remove, the holidays and surprises, from the 52 weeks out of the year, let's say it's 40 weeks that they'll do that 24 hours a week. That adds up to 960 hours. So they're not hitting 1,000 either. So you're into a 2-year project at a professional shop if you're into something that's 1,000 hours. So before you get frustrated and angry at a shop because it's taken a long time, you have to realistically look at these numbers and realize that this stuff takes time to do it right. Now, that brings up a whole nother issue. If the shop is not doing you right, and if they're not communicating with you, and they're not doing good work, well, that's a whole nother deal. You need to go get your car and take it someplace where they're going to do some quality work. There's no reason to put up with that kind of garbage, because there are legit places out there that do good work. You have to understand that these guys, there's only so much that they can do, and your expectations have got to be realistic on what it takes to do something like this. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea on what it takes to kind of do these things and to not get frustrated with these times and numbers. And here's one of the things you need to look at. If you've gotten into a project and it's overwhelming you, and now with these numbers that I've given you, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm into this thing upside down. Gather it all up and sell it. Even if you have to take a loss on it, it's better than the anguish of putting up with the next 10 years and not finishing it. And get something that's more in line with your skill level, your budget, and your timeline. And you'll be much happier. You'll be much happier with that kind of thing. Here's an example of how people can get into that. I had a really good friend, and they wanted to build this 57 Chevy wagon. And they were like, we want to build this thing from the ground up. And I told them, listen, man, there are so many of those for sale right now. Go out there, get your 30 grand, buy one. And then paint it your color, do your little things to it, but you already have a solid running and driving car. And they were like, oh, no, we don't want to do that. We want to build it ourselves. Now, keep in mind, this person had never built a car before. Hadn't even really tweaked on him that much, but never done anything that was a full ground up deal. So it was going to be at all these shops and all this other stuff. Anyway, long story short, 4 or 5 years went past, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the car is still not finished to this day. It's there, but it doesn't run right. The engineering on it was not done. The suspension's bad. It was just hacked from shop to shop. And unfortunately, these people have a really bad taste in their mouth toward the automotive industry. And it's really a shame, because it's just, it kind of ruined it for them. It was partially their fault, but it was, also they took it to some places that they shouldn't have. They really didn't do their research and get into a project the way they should have. So I say that as a cautionary tale. I've seen this a lot. So you guys be careful out there, man. Make sure that you're getting something that is within your budget, it is within your timeline, and it's within your skill level, your tool level, your time and your space, and make sure it fits into the workspace that you've got. So to wrap this thing up, let me leave you with this thought. Before you get into a project that is going to take way too much of your time and energy, remember this: time is that one thing that is priceless. And it is what everybody wishes for more of at the end of their life. Everybody goes, I wish I had more time. So you have a limited amount, spend it wisely. You know, one question I get a lot when guys are talking about jobs is about Cornwell tools. We talk about Cornwell a lot, and you see me use their stuff on the show a lot. People are asking, hey, how do I become a dealer? Man, all you have to do is contact Cornwell, tell them you're interested in becoming a dealer, and you'll be on your way. And it is a great company to work for, and they've been around a long time. You've seen the tools, you've seen the way they operate. They're definitely worth checking out. So if you're sitting there and kind of wondering where your life is going to go and maybe looking for a new career, you may want to look into becoming a Cornwell tool dealer. All right, this next question comes from Mike. And Mike says, what do I need to do with a transmission that has not been used in 18 years? Well, Mike, reach down there and pick that thing up and walk over to your neighbor's pickup in his yard and drop it in the back. I'm kidding, of course. No, seriously. You don't say if this is an automatic transmission or a manual, so let's just kind of start at the beginning. Really what Mike is asking here is, what do you do with old parts? You know, is this stuff any good? It's been sitting. A couple big things here, Mike. You don't tell me if it's an automatic or a stick, and you don't tell me how it's been stored. So those are the first big questions, things that you need to look at. Obviously, in anything that has any kind of oil in it, changing the oil is always paramount. But a manual transmission is a lot less susceptible to getting all clogged up than an automatic, because an automatic's got all those little ports and all of those little tunnels and everything that fluid has to go through, and a manual just has the gears that are out there. So I definitely, with any transmission, I would change the oil. But another thing is, find out how it was used 18 years ago. In other words, how did it end up unused and on the floor of your shop or wherever it's at? And try to get an honest answer. A lot of times guys will go, I don't know, it was running good when I pulled it out of the Camaro. And it's like, that you can't always trust that. Matter of fact, you can't ever trust that. 18 years is a long time. So find out whatever you can about the past use, and then take a good look at how it has been stored. If it's been thrown in a pile in a nasty old garage and it's covered with 20 feet of sawdust and crap, that's a rebuild right there. You know, if it's been up on a shelf, you know, shrink wrapped, in good shape, chances are the guy took care of it. But either way, the very least, you want to change the oils. For me, if you've got it out and you're wanting to use it in a project, it's cheap to go down and have it rebuilt. Just take it down to a Mr. Transmission or whatever, somebody that's reputable, somebody that knows, and have it gone through. And just say, hey, listen, I got this old C6. It's been sitting here. I need it rebuilt. The thing is, most of the cost to having a transmission rebuilt, and I'm talking like an automatic, is the labor of taking it in and out of the car. So if you've already got it out and you just take it down there, they're not that expensive to have rebuilt. And that way you can stress, hey, I want a shift kit put in it. I want this put in it. You can have it set up for the way you want it to run. Biggest thing you want to look for, you know, in like a manual transmission, you know, if it's an old top loader or a Muncie or something like that, is you want to pull the inspection plates off and look at the gears and the synchros. And you'll be able to tell if those are needing to be replaced. But even if they do, they're worth replacing. So, man, I would take it down to a transmission place, have them go through it, and then you do know what you have. Don't take chances on something sitting for 18 years. That is a boat anchor. All right, that wraps it up for us today. Make sure that you check out the Gears TV website. We got all kinds of cool stuff there. We got a couple new die casts coming out. Got some books coming out. We have all kinds of things going on. But the most important thing is get out there and turn some wrenches yourself. Get a project. If you don't have one, start working on it. And if you don't have tools, check out Cornwell. They can help you out there.